He saved lives. At least that's what people believed. He delivered babies in the early hours of the morning. He diagnosed cancers that other doctors had missed. He comforted families in their worst moments, holding hands, speaking softly, wearing the white coat like a second skin. Patients adored him. Colleagues respected him. The hospital trusted him with their most vulnerable cases. He had never spent a single day in medical school. 15 years. That's how long he walked through hospital corridors, stethoscope around his neck, chart in hand, answering to the title of doctor. 15 years of prescriptions, of surgeries assisted, of patients who placed their lives, quite literally, in his hands. And the truly disturbing part isn't just that he fooled everyone. It's what happened when they finally found out. Because some of those patients, they didn't want him arrested. They wanted him back. It started, as so many deceptions do, with a small lie told to solve an immediate problem. He was in his mid-20s, intelligent, genuinely so. He had attended pre-med courses, absorbed textbooks the way other people absorb novels, and had an almost unnerving ability to speak the language of medicine. The terminology, the cadence, the calm authority that physicians carry into a room. But the degree, that piece of paper that separates a doctor from everyone else, he didn't have one, so he made one. In the early days, it wasn't glamorous. A small clinic in a rural area, understaffed, overwhelmed, desperate for help. The kind of place that doesn't ask too many questions because they can't afford the answers. He showed up. He worked harder than anyone. He was kind when the overworked staff was exhausted. He stayed late. He remembered patients' names, their children's names, their fears. Nobody checked his credentials. Nobody thought to. Here's where it gets complicated and uncomfortable, because he was good at it, not reckless, not performing surgeries he had no business performing. He was careful, methodical even, in a way that many licensed doctors are not. He read obsessively. He consulted colleagues under the guise of collaboration. He knew his limits better than some people who had actually earned their diplomas. One former nurse, speaking years later, said she had worked alongside dozens of physicians in her career. He was, she paused, one of the most attentive she had ever seen. She didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified by that. As the years passed, his confidence grew, and with confidence came ambition. He moved from that small rural clinic to a larger facility, then to another. Each move required new paperwork, new references, new lies stacked carefully on top of old ones. He forged letters of recommendation from institutions that had never heard of him. He fabricated a residency at a hospital 2 states away. He built, document by document, an entirely fictional medical career, and then lived inside it, day after day, year after year. A decade passed, then another 5 years on top of that. He had a salary, benefits, a plaque on his office door. He had a life. But here is the question that investigators would later struggle to answer. The one that made this case more than just a fraud story. Did anyone get hurt? Some did, undeniably. There were cases where his lack of formal training likely contributed to delayed diagnoses, to incorrect treatments, to outcomes that might have been different in the hands of someone properly trained. Those cases exist. They matter. But there were also hundreds of patients who received genuine care, who recovered, who credited him, specifically him, with saving their lives. That contradiction sat at the center of every courtroom argument, every ethics hearing, every late-night conversation among the staff who had worked beside him without knowing. It ended the way most long cons end, not with a dramatic confrontation, not with a genius investigator connecting invisible dots. It ended with paperwork. A routine hospital merger triggered a mandatory re-credentialing process. Every physician on staff was required to resubmit their licensing documentation through a new centralized system, one with direct verification ties to state medical boards. His documents went in. The verification came back. No record found. At first, they assumed it was an administrative error. These things happen. He was calm when they approached him, collected, almost eerily so, and offered to contact the licensing board directly to resolve the confusion. He disappeared that evening. Not forever. Within 48 hours, law enforcement had located him. He didn't run far. Maybe he was tired. Maybe after 15 years of performing an identity, the weight of it had finally become too much to carry. He was arrested, charged with multiple counts of practicing medicine without a license, fraud, and identity falsification. The investigation that followed would take months and would reach back through every hospital he had ever worked in, pulling case files, interviewing former patients, reconstructing a career that had never legally existed. The legal outcome was significant. Prison time, civil suits, a lifetime ban from any medical setting in any capacity. But the cultural reckoning that followed was messier and far more revealing. Hospitals across the country quietly reviewed their credentialing systems and found, quietly, with very little fanfare, that he was not unique. Cases of fraudulent credentials in medical settings surface with troubling regularity. Most are caught faster. Some are not caught at all. The white coat, it turns out, is one of the most powerful pieces of clothing a human being can wear. It bypasses skepticism. It silences questions. It makes people hand over their bodies, their trust, their fear, without a second thought. We are wired to trust authority. Medicine is the most authoritative institution most of us ever encounter. And that gap between the trust we extend and the verification we perform is exactly the space he lived in for 15 years. In one of the few interviews he gave after his arrest, he was asked a simple question. Did he ever feel guilty? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I felt guilty about the lie. Never about the work." And that, perhaps, is the most unsettling line of this entire story. Not the fraud, not the forgeries, not even the 15 years. The fact that he might have meant it. The coat is still hanging in an evidence locker somewhere, pressed, clean, name embroidered in blue thread just above the pocket. A name that was never really his. A life he built from nothing, and somehow, impossibly, made real